This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
Hey everyone, and welcome. It is time now for the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, and we've got a Mavs-centric version of the Ultimate tonight for you. We're putting a wrap on an incredibly tumultuous Mavs season, and we got a great way to do so. But before I go any further, the man who puts this whole thing together, who's going to tell us more about what's going on with tonight's edition, the one and only Andrew Cely.
Well, you kind of set me up for it, but Luka was traded on February 1st, and exactly 77 days later, the Mavs season, it was over. So we got a lot to get into, specifically within the last 7, about a specific press event, but let's get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
The year is 3077. Humanity has long since fled Earth for the stars. Adelson Arena and Casino Resort, the most recent home of the Mavs, rots and decays in the middle of post-apocalyptic Dallas. In the darkest corner of a boardroom, far away from cameras and microphones, a hologram of former GM Nico Harrison flickers on and off, greeting dust mites and cockroaches with a single phrase, repeating like a record scratch. Defense wins championships. Yeah, Nico Harrison and the Mavericks are front and center once again on this show. We'll break down the end of the road for this year's Mavs, and it's the return of no fence riding. That's what's on the show. Joe, now who's on the show?
Hey, listen, since we're talking Mavericks, we got 2 of our favorites, and they will be joining us on this night. ESPN's Tim MacMahon, who's been breaking news and coming up with all kinds of interesting tidbits, and we've got more from Timmy Mac tonight, and the one and only Nick Angstadt from our Locked On podcast. He covers this team every single game, every single night. He's been through all the tumult. It's the one and only Nick Angstadt. So let's jump in right now, fellas. All right, so season mercifully over. I'll put it that way. This thing done. Thank goodness. I don't even think they should have made the play-in. They should have tried to make the lottery, but I'm not going to go on that rant again. Nick has heard it too much. All right, Timmy Mac, let's start with you. So we get to hear from Nico again, and hey, this time we actually get to bring cameras. So TV guys like me are pretty jacked up for this thing. What do you expect from Nico tomorrow?
Howdy, partners. Listen, my advice to him, not that he's seeking my counsel on anything, been a lot of things that would have been different had he, but my advice to him would be to say, hey, I answered questions about the Luka trade for almost an hour the other day. I've given my explanation. Not that there's any logic in the explanation, but he's given his explanation. And we are looking at this Mavericks franchise, this roster, this summer moving forward. Happy to answer all your questions about that. We are not going to go back to that fateful night, February 1st, just before midnight, when I put a shank in Luka Doncic's back. Just blindsided the guy. Got him good, put it in, and got him, shipped him off to LA. We're not talking about that anymore. We're focused on now. We're focused on the future. We're focused on this 3 to 4 year time frame that Nico's created that runs out just as they owe all those picks that are due, that they used to successfully build a finals team around Luka Doncic. Apparently not a contender, though. Did not believe that team could contend because, I'll say it again, defense wins championships. The Mavericks didn't win a championship with Luka Doncic. They're going to win one with AD. They're going to win one with Kyrie, and I expect Nico Harrison to tell you why tomorrow afternoon. Boys, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it. I came up to Oklahoma City. I was expecting to meet the Mavericks up here. They didn't make it. Now, neither did the Memphis Grizzlies for Game 1, but that's a whole nother story. I'll do a sports show in Memphis. We can talk about that. But so Joe, you're gonna have to throw the fastballs without me. My arm was tired anyway. I tossed all the heat I could the other day.
Well, listen, I felt bad at a family obligation. I was invited to that press conference, and I was bumming that I couldn't be there because I'm a big right-hander. I wanted to throw some heat in that one with you, bud. So I will take the mantle. And speaking of that, I actually got a text from Nick who asked about the other press conference. So, Nick, I know you're going to bring some heat because you'll have a seat at this table.
Oh. I mean, what else has he's answered everything. The problem is he keeps giving the same answers to all these things. So I'm curious if there's going to be any new information. I don't know that there's a thing we can ask him in this presser that's coming up that's going to give something new. I agree with Tim that he'll probably have to focus on the future, focus on what's coming next for the Mavericks, because they do have a lot of things that they have to figure out. They've got Kyrie with this player option. They have to figure out how to get any kind of guard help. Right now, the only guard on the roster is Brandon Williams and Jaden Hardy, basically, with Dinwiddie and Exum being free agents. So he's going to focus on that tomorrow. But of course, all the questions will be on the Luka trade and everything like that. I just don't know that we'll learn anything new from it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think Dinwiddie's got to be headed out the door, because when you start that game against Memphis the way they did with that big lineup again, and then you just get turnover after turnover after turnover after turnover, I'm just screaming, all right, Jason, you can put in a guard at any time, and he didn't pull the trigger on Dinwiddie. It ended up being Brandon Williams a little bit later. I found that actually pretty interesting with how he was giving him minutes at the end, and there were none for Dinwiddie. Is that one of the first moves you guys expect in the offseason, Tim?
Well, and it's not even a move. You know, he was on a 1-year minimum deal, so they don't have to release him. You know, they don't have to trade him. The contract expires. My guess is that they will both look for other situations there. And I mean, listen, nobody wants to hear about silver linings in a wet fart of a season. But Brandon Williams was one of the bright spots. You know, the guy's got a little bit of juice, but he's the only guy on the roster right now who you can trust to dribble the ball up the floor.
Unbelievable.
You know, I mean,
unbelievable.
Najee Marshall, he's 6'8", kind of 3'4", was their starting point guard fighting the season. By the way, Spencer Dinwiddie led the team in minutes this season on a veteran minimum contract. If that doesn't tell you how haywire things went, I don't know what does. And I believe he was DMPCD in the season opener and still led the team in minutes. I mean, but there was, listen, I mean, if we're going to do an autopsy, boys, like, you know, I thank goodness I went to college for 8 years, didn't get a medical degree, but I can do a Mavericks autopsy. There's a whole lot of stuff to pick out on this one.
I was going to say that would be about a 2-hour Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Nick, did you like anything about the multiple bigs that they would run out when they could stay healthy, by the way?
I mean, you looked at these two play-in games, and then in the Sacramento game, it was pretty much everything that is good about the lineup and the thing that the Mavericks have put together now is that they have size, they can rebound. It's going to be really hard for guards to get any kind of like dribble penetration and take shots at the rim. The Kings only took 10 shots at the rim that entire game. The Mavs also only took 10 shots. That's a different problem the Mavs have. But defensively, there's a lot to like there for sure. There's, you know, you're already seeing some chemistry of Lively and AD, Gafford and AD working well together. They're going to need that a lot next year. But then you look at the Grizzlies game, and it's pretty much everything that was bad about what they've developed so far. They, you know, like Tim said, they didn't start any guards, and then they turned the ball over and over again. You're trying to figure out, all right, well, if we're playing against two bigs on the other side, then there goes our advantage. So now how do we generate offense? How do we get stops? It's a big issue for the Mavericks right now. So they have a lot to do this offseason to try and fix any of that in any meaningful way.
And this team is so short, especially without Kyrie, but even with Kyrie, this team did not have enough playmaking. It did not have enough shooting. And there's a lot of things we can pick apart about the Luka trade, you know, and I know you guys have done a lot of that. I've done a lot of that. Luka made Lively the best possible player he could be. Luka enhanced everything Lively did well. Lively was a perfect pick and roll partner for the best pick and roll operator in the game. Without Luka, Lively's just stuck out there offensively. It just doesn't really fit in anything that they're trying to do. And Klay Thompson came to Dallas in large part because he wanted to be spoon-fed wide open threes by Luka. I'm sure you guys saw it, and I waited until the end of the season, kind of out of fairness to Klay. But when I said, knowing what you know now, would you have still made the decision to come to Dallas? And Klay's initial reaction was to go just like this. Oh. Like that tells you, you know, whatever words came out after that.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't do that to me. Don't do this to me. I don't have a time machine." But Luka made everybody on that roster better. Made all the fits better. PJ Washington, both bigs, Klay Thompson, even Kyrie, because now with Luka, Kyrie could kind of pick and choose through three quarters and then have all the gas left in the tank to be that fourth quarter closer. You take that guy out, and everybody on the roster comes down 3 or 4 notches. And so it's just a head scratcher. That's on the list.
No doubt. It is a domino cascading effect that we're about to watch, and it is going to be tough to watch and hard for Nico Harrison to try and rebuild this roster. All right, we got to take a quick break, but we got plenty more coming up. One final word about the way this season ended. Plus, Timmy Mack coming up with another blockbuster article that we all have to check out. We'll have a little sneak peek, a little preview. That's all coming your way next on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Rangers dropped their series finale against the Dodgers 1-0 this afternoon. Next up, a 6-game West Coast road swing starting against the Athletics on Tuesday. And the top-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder made an opening round statement with a 50-point blowout win over the Grizzlies in Game 1. It bears repeating, the transitive property does not exist in sports.
It does not.
However, the Grizzlies lose to the Thunder by 50. The Grizzlies blow out the Mavs. So if you want to say they're 80 points away from the top seed in the West, go ahead, because I feel like that's what a lot of Mavs fans actually feel like. And I'll also say this as far as the timing surrounding most of the pressers and everything that's been going on. The fact that Nico holds that press event 12 hours after Page is drafted by the Wings is just the pinnacle of comedy, almost. It's like, hey, we're turning the page. Awesome new talent coming into town. By the way, what happened to the last one? I mean, you could not ask for funnier comedic timing throughout this entire thing.
What does our resident Wings fan think about that, Nick?
Oh, I couldn't have just one thing, like just one thing in Dallas basketball I could hold on to for even 24 hours before that press conference came out right after. But I was at the draft party. I was enjoying it. Paige is going to be amazing, and I'm glad that Kurt Miller is not Nico Harrison as of right now.
No doubt about that. But speaking about Nico Harrison and some of the dysfunction that we've seen from that organization, the response to the Luka trade just from the jump was tone deaf. It was just really spitting in the face of their fan base on so many different occasions, and inability to work through just very basic public relations strategy and crisis management strategy. They were just clueless on a lot of different levels. And Timmy Mack, you've got another article coming out that details more dysfunction that has led to a rift with the GOAT of this franchise. Give us a sneak peek, if you would.
Well, there's a reason I was asking all those questions about Casey Smith, the longtime head athletic trainer, then head of the Elton Performance Group, a guy who was snatched up in a heartbeat by Jalen Brunson's New York Knicks just as soon as his contract came up. And by the way, had an offer from at least one other team. A guy with 2 gold medals, maybe the most respected person in his field. When he was fired in August 2023, it was an insane decision. And Nico said nobody made a big deal out of it last year. At the time it happened, I was like, this is going to be a thing. And then, hey, they did go to the finals. So did I make a big deal out of it then? No. How could I? But guess what? It reared its ugly head early, often, and frequently this season. That decision and the way that decision went down, which I do explain in that article, drove Dirk Nowitzki away from this franchise. That's one of the primary reasons that Dirk wants nothing to do with the inner working of the Dallas Mavericks. It created major friction between Nico and his new hire, but particularly Nico and Luka Doncic's camp. That friction definitely factored into the shocking decision to trade a 25-year-old generational talent fresh off a finals appearance. And then I don't know if you guys were aware, but the Mavericks had a few medical issues this year. And Nico said that the guys he brought in, both to replace Casey Smith and Jimmy Holsapple, by the way, the 2021 NBA Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, also pretty accomplished in his field. Let's just say there was a little bit of headbutt, a little bit of friction between Nico's hand-picked new hires, and that, kind of filtered out to just the complete, I can't think of a word that I can use on over-the-air television, that the Mavericks medical situation was this season. Look, was there some bad luck? Was there some misfortune?
Sure.
Absolutely. But it was also a complete mess, and that goes back to you don't fire the best guy in the business for no good reason. And then, here you go. You drive away Dirk, you create friction with Luka, and you can barely put 8 healthy guys on the floor for a significant stretch of the season as you're dipping under 500. We dig into all that tomorrow morning on ESPN.com. It's a heartwarming tale.
I cannot wait. And listen, Nick, you're around this club all the time. So when you hear these kind of things, I mean, what does that conjure up? Because you're there. I mean, you're with them. You're every day. You're embedded almost, with that organization as much as you can be in your role. What do you think when you hear these kind of things?
Oh, just the fact that Dirk no longer wants to have anything to do with this franchise, that's enough of a failure in and of itself to prove that something terrible has happened, right? There are still people that are trying to convince themselves well, it was going to happen. They were going to have to trade Luka. There's other things that happened in all this, right? There's a big conspiracy that the NBA made the Mavericks make the Luka trade, and maybe that happened. It's going really well for LA and the ratings and all that. But the fact that you have all these other things, the Casey Smith firing, the different people that were removed and things like that there were other things that happened around it, kind of is the smoking gun to that this trade just happened solely for the reasons that we've been told, which makes it, again, even more insane.
Let me put it to you in these terms very quickly. If Jerry Jones did something to absolutely alienate the likes of Roger Staubach or Troy Aikman,
like firing Tom Landry,
or Jimmy Johnson,
the greats. He did it with Jimmy Johnson. But if he came back and did it later, I mean, we would be so all over him, just nonstop, like we are all the time. And that's what this situation is. All right, we're going to let it go at that because we're about to have some fun. We've been keeping it pretty heavy. We're going to lighten things up. It's no fence riding, one of our favorite games that we play here on Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. That is coming your way next.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for everyone except Michelle's favorite game, no fence riding. The concept is simple. I've got a couple of statements for our esteemed panel, and it's up to them to decide which side of the fence they're on. No waffling, or they get called out and maybe featured on the next Open. All right, statement number one here. New owners and GMs have an obligation to know and honor the legacy and history of established franchises. I wonder why I'm bringing this up. Nick, start us off here. What do you think?
How could anyone say no to this? I can't even think of the reason that, like, maybe a brand new franchise that hasn't happened, or like maybe the Seattle Supersonics get a team again. And like, do you have to know the history of the Sonics before that? But even still, like, yes, absolutely. You need to know the culture of your team, or else something like this happens where you just physically do not understand how much Dirk means to this franchise, and then how much Luka means because of how much Dirk means, right? Like, we're starting to break this down a little bit, that Luka was the bridge from Dirk to the new era of the Mavericks. And since that was taken away, fans were not going to just like forgive that right away. And now we're seeing with Dirk distancing himself from the franchise, it's even worse for Mavs fans.
Tim, did you know about the culture of the Mavericks before this recent presser happened?
Well, also, I want to fill you in on a little Sonics history. Boy, it was not popular when they traded 34-year-old Lenny Wilkens. That was one of the guys that Rick Welts compared this trade to. Lenny Wilkens from Seattle, Stephon Marbury from the Suns, and zero-time All-Star Monte Ellis, fresh off 4 lottery trips with the Golden State Warriors. Just like 5-time first-team All-NBA selection Luka Doncic, 5 months removed, or a few months removed, however many months, I don't know. Not many months removed from an NBA Finals appearance. So, yeah, I would say that at least a working knowledge of the recent history, of the tradition. And if you're not going to kind of honor it, you at least have to have a great explanation for not doing so.
And you brought up my next point.
It's got to be more than 3 words. It's got to be more than 3 words.
Well, and you brought up my next point, because I think the responsibility isn't just the knowledge. It's to honor the past greats. It's to make sure that they set the culture and that all the new people who come into the building know, listen, this guy did it this way. Dirty was in that gym night after night after night, digging it out, making sure that he could be the best that he could be. That's the Maverick standard. That's what we expect. And you can use that as a fulcrum to greatness. Instead, they've used it for a diving board into a vat of inequity. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Listen, I'm just sick and tired of hearing the Pittsburgh Steelers pound their chest on defense and then inevitably have a middling defense. And granted, they've been great lately, but that's what they build themselves on. That's part of the culture of these cities. It's why these cities have teams that represent themselves. And that's part of ownership and trying to connect generation to generation and pass it down. All right, let's keep it going here. Second statement. All the regular season needs to be is a path to earning a ticket in the playoffs. There's been a recent string of belief in sports Twitter that it's not fair that the 8th seed in the play-in tournament can get ousted by losing 2 games in the play-in, or in baseball where a 100-win team gets undone in a 5-game series, or whatever. Point is this. You lose 2 games with your season on the line, you don't deserve to be in anyway. Tim, lead us off here.
What do you want? Like a guaranteed championship?
Yeah.
I was in Oklahoma City today. They won a Northwest Division championship banner. If you want to do that, fine. But that's what you get from the regular season. You get a seed, and if you want to put a little ribbon up in the rafters for a division champion or whatever, cool. But that's what the regular season is. The playoffs, that's when trophies are earned. That's when legacies are made.
Well, and I love the expansion. I think the expansion is great. It brings more teams, more fan bases in. Yeah, is there some unfairness to it? I don't care. Don't end up as, the 7th or 8th seed. It's pretty simple. You had a season to determine that you wouldn't be down there. And if you were better, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But you didn't pull it off, so now you do. So go win a couple games.
And Nick, how do you feel about being the 8th seed and getting ousted?
Well, you could be the Miami Heat, be the 10th seed, and end up making the playoffs for the first time. And that happens, right? You got to win. The play-in, the thing about the play-in is it makes the last couple of months of the season relevant for more franchises. So if there was no play-in, as soon as the trade happens for the Mavericks and all the injuries happen, they shut everybody down because there's just no chance for them to make any kind of playoff run at all at that point. I think they were like 6 games back or something from the 8th seed or something like that. There'd be no relevance. And then you have the fight for 6. All those other teams in the West that were fighting for 6 and could have been tied by the end of the season. I mean, there's some interest there, and that's all that it is. It's just trying to make that stuff more interesting. And then you get a Clippers-Warriors game at the end of the season that is awesome, and you get a couple play-in games that are awesome, and that's fine. That's all it needs to be.
That's it. I totally agree. All right, listen, our resident hoop heads, you guys knocked it out the park tonight. We appreciate you both, Tim MacMahon, Nick Angstadt. Great stuff. We're going to take one final break, and I've got a final take for you coming up after this. Here's the final take for you, and it is directed at the Dallas Mavericks. GM Nico Harrison and their entire outfit that is in charge of their PR campaigns. Why did it have to come to this? Why is Nico Harrison talking tomorrow? And we're making fun of the fact that he will actually have cameras there. Why did it have to come to this? Why aren't you more transparent? Your fans, they buy the tickets. They watch TV so you can get more ad revenue. You need to be more responsible, more accountable, and more transparent with them, and that we wouldn't have to be here making fun of what you've been doing. That's my final take. And that's Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. And I feel like I'm sorry.
Keep banging the drum, man.
Listen,
that's all it is.
They deserve it. And it's a shame.
It absolutely is. We'll see what happens.
For Andrew Cely and yours truly, Joe Trahan, that is a look at the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Have a great night.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.